Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone to today's webinar on visualizing library assessment data. It's brought to you by ACRL's Project Outcome for Academic Libraries and the Canadian Association of Research Libraries. The webinar is being recorded, as Gina said, so you will get a link afterwards, and we'll also make it available in the resources on the Project Outcomes site. Today's presenters, we have quite a full slate. I am Sarah Grech, Program Manager at ACRL, joined by my colleague Gina Parsons-Diamond, who you heard doing the introductions. And we have three colleagues from the University of Calgary: Mary Jo Romaniuk, Vice Provost for Libraries and Cultural Resources; Justine Wheeler, Assessment Librarian; and John Brose, the Coordinator for Research Data and Visualization. So we're very happy to have them joining us today. Today, we'll be talking about two different toolkits, both of which are available to you for free. The first is the CARL Data Visualization Toolkit, which our colleagues from the University of Calgary will be talking about, and some principles for data visualization. And the second will be Project Outcome for Academic Libraries, which is designed to help you specifically measure learning outcomes data, which is just one type of the assessment data that your library is likely collecting. Both of these resources, again, are free and available to anyone, anywhere. Please do type your questions in the chat box as we go along. We'll try and keep track, make sure we don't miss any, and address them all by the end of the webinar. And with that, I am going to turn it over to John.
Okay, so welcome to sort of the Calgary part of the presentation, and we'll start off talking about the CARL Data Visualization Toolkit.
Hi, it's Mary Jo Romaniuk, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how this project came to be. The Canadian Association of Research Libraries has an assessment committee, which you would expect, not unlike the Association of Research Libraries as well. And we also had a subcommittee that deals with continuing education. So that working group, the CARL directors had determined that one of the things that they needed to do better, since everybody collects so many statistics, we submit to ARL, to CARL, to ACRL, in the US, to IPED. So there's lots of statistics collected, lots of data collected, things that we don't submit, but there's this huge data environment that exists, and they thought that we needed a tool for visualization. So that's really where the project started. You will see the site, it's moving to WordPress in the future, but there will be a redirection on the page. So CARL is in the process of moving it. It's done now in a LibGuide, but you will see that it will move in the next short while. I want to acknowledge the librarians that worked on the project: Alison Amby from Memorial, Pam Morgan from Memorial, Kate Cushion from University of Regina, Tana Gottschalk from University of Manitoba, Jenny Hurst from University of Waterloo, and Lori Clota from Concordia. So it is their work that constitutes this toolkit. So this was where the problem started. The directors of the Canadian Library groups and realized that both they and some of their assessment staff and other members, decision-making members of their libraries, needed data. And we are awash in data. There's no doubt about it. Things we collect deliberately, surveys that we do, assessments that we do, formal statistics that we formulate, and other things that just exist that we don't even think about much as data. So we needed a better way to use this more effectively, and the directors had suggested that we needed a dashboard. So they didn't think about visualization as a whole, they leapt right to the dashboard, which is kind of the way directors think sometimes. So they'll solve the problem without looking at it wholly. But nonetheless, I think we're on a good path. One of the things that you can see from this is that it's not clear, the relationships between that data. So it's fairly siloed. User patron data is quite different than sometimes some of the other data we collect. And so there was a recognition amongst the directors we needed a better way to bring it all together. Okay, so I use this quote Mark Twain attributed to the British Prime Minister Disraeli, but nonetheless, lies, damned lies, and statistics. And I put that there largely because with all of this data, we have some sort of duty to make sure that the data is relevant and that it's appropriate. And I think that the whole reason for this project is that there is no magic bullet for any individual institution or for a collective of institution in terms of what data to collect or what statistics to keep. So we are constantly looking to make sure things are relevant and that they're relevant to a particular library. And my library might be different to your library, so the relevant data will be different. And arguably, at a particular point in time, the data would be different that we're most interested in. And I would use the example of collections data. 10, 20 years ago, collections data was one of the things we looked at, or circulation in particular, very as a significant indicator of our worthiness, but now it's much less important as we move to a completely different world. There are all the national initiatives, as I mentioned before, to collect statistics, and we take that data and we tend to want to use it for resource alignment, how we allocate space, people, and dollars. So it's important, but out of context and without contemplation and without a good understanding of it, it doesn't lead to good decisions. So part of the project was to improve that decision-making capability. So that brings me to say that really we collect this data, we recognize for two things: decision-making, so all of those kinds of components of decision-making, and also for demonstrating value. I think that's a more increasing importance of our reason for using data, and we've kind of shifted from input measures and output measures to more focus on outcome measures, and that value piece really, and again, these two again highlight the why we need a toolkit, not just a single tool, because institutions are different and our audience for demonstrating values may be different at different institutions. So directors need good data sets for decision-making and communications, and good comes from seeing and looking at the data and being able to follow and understand why. We look for patterns and we look for anomalies, and we need to make sure that we're making good decisions based on data that makes sense. So sense making means it means that we have the ability to easily analyze, to see interrelationships and inconsistencies in the data before we make decisions. The other thing that it highlights, or we hope to highlight, is the fact that good data doesn't just happen. It exists there, but there's times where we choose to collect data, and it means we have to be very thoughtful in the planning as to how we're going to use it so that we can not only get the right data for the right decisions, but we can present it in ways that are meaningful and help us do all of those things. So it starts with the collection and moves onward. And I would give you an example there of data that sometimes is misleading and why this all works so well together. It starts with, I was looking at circulation data once, and the library had a huge bump in circulation, and people had suggested all sorts of reasons this had occurred. And the reality behind it, it was really just the fact that people were using their individual cards for a bindery project and signing out huge elements, the same parts of the collection. So without knowing this and without digging into the data and without looking at patterns over time and it in relation to other things, you might not have dug into that and you might have made wrong decisions. So what is a data dashboard? The thought of a data dashboard would do all of these things, to take that chaos and put it into a useful and organized way of looking at the data to be able to assess how an institution was doing and having a ready way of communicating with stakeholders. The visuals were thought to be very important, and so not only do we need unique toolkits for every institution, but comprehensive toolkits to deal, so that we have data to deal with all of these elements. And finally, as I said, it's really important that it was unique for every library. So the charge to the committee was not to build a data dashboard or to build a single toolkit, but to provide the tools that would help directors and assessment professionals and others in the libraries to assess what they use, how they were going to use it, who their audience was, and then to collect and respond to the decision-making and communication needs by not only collecting the right data, but using it and analyzing it and being able to modify it over time. So that is what led to this product. It is in LibGuide format. As I mentioned, it's moving to WordPress soon. It is there to provide guidance to those that want to develop a data tool, particularly a data dashboard that would contain all of these elements. It is food for thought. It is fairly comprehensive. And I think when you see it in the WordPress environment in the future, it'll be even easier to read, but it solves the problems of being comprehensive and useful to a multitude of institutions. And finally, I've already talked about the rationale and uses and why this tool was developed. And I think they're all addressed here, things that I've already talked up. We want to focus on unique environments. We often use data to compare institutions or compare ourselves to others, but that doesn't mean that there are things that are more comparable. And so sometimes I need to look at which institutions I'm comparing to with a better understanding of those institutions to make sure they're truly comparable. And so again, this tool set and the pieces that are in here, everything from the tools and technologies to data sources and collection methods, challenges the user to build a dashboard that makes sense and to use it in a way that is productive and useful to your organization. The reality is, while we keep talking about dashboards, the directors were really challenging us all to think not just about data dashboards, but really about the power of data visualization in general.
Okay, and so this is John Brose, and this is where I'll step in and talk a little about what data visualization is and why it's such a powerful way to work with data. And so looking at some definitions here, it starts off with really the high level of where we're going to take data and we're going to visually represent it. But we can get kind of more theoretical and think about it as changing, data, which usually we see in symbols as numbers or letters, into geometry, something visual that has sort of almost a physical basis. It's also a way of creating an artificial memory to support, our strongest means of perception. Kind of a more computery one here is we can use computer-generated interactive visual representations of data to amplify cognition. That amplified cognition is important. By doing this, we're going to make ourselves smarter. We can focus on higher level tasks. And last of all, it's the use of visual representations to explore, make sense of, and communicate data. So it's a way we can work with data and a way we can sort of communicate what's happening in data. This dealing with data is important. It used to be that getting data was the hard part. As Mary Jo said, we're now in an era where this data is free and ubiquitous. Maybe not free, but it's definitely all over the place. And so really the scarce factor is the ability to extract value from it. And visualization is a strong tool for doing that. So why do we visualize? Why don't we use smell, touch? Why don't we show data tables? Why are we visualizing things? So one reason we do that is that visual bandwidth is enormous. Really, it's our strongest sense. We can take in the most data from our environment that way, and it happens to work really nicely and easily over computers. We also have these perceptual skills. They're pre-attentive cognitive skills, and so what that means is they're things that you can do without having to think about it. And so we can see things like trends, gaps, outliers, without having to think, and so putting it in a format where we can visually see these things, not have to think about them, we can focus on higher level things. So just a couple examples of that is here, if I show you a whole bunch of numbers and I ask you how many threes are there, it's kind of, maybe it's not hard, but it's a tedious problem to go through and pick all those out and count them. Whereas if I adjust how you perceive those, suddenly this problem becomes easy. You spend hardly any time at all on that. And same thing here, if I ask you to count these dots, it's hard, it's tedious. Whereas if I apply a little bit of visual structure to them, you can do that almost instantly. And so if we really pay attention to how we take data and visualize it, we can make understanding that data much easier. This is probably my favorite example. This is a famous set of four data sets. It's called Anscombe's Quartet. And so here we have sets A, B, C, and D. They're all 2 coordinates. And what they all have is they all have the same average. They all have the same deviation. So if you run them through stats, they look really similar. And if you just look at them, you can see the X coordinates on A, B, and C are all the same. D, we have a thing where there's a bunch of 8s and a 19. But trying to look at those and understand what's going on, it's really challenging. And so basically you have to load them all into your memory and try and think about them in comparison to each other. And it's a hard thing to do. Whereas if I show you these little plots of them, it becomes instantly super easy. Set A, you can see looks like kind of normal noisy data. Set B, we have a nice curve. Set C, we have a line with maybe what could be an error there. And set D, we have sort of a cluster and an outlier. And so we just took this really hard problem that we would have had to think about and really use our memory to something that's almost instantaneous, and you're focusing on kind of the higher level of what this data means and what it's saying to us. Another thing is that visualization is a way of externally representing data so that we don't have to keep it in our memory. And so we can just sort of take some of that thinking and get it out of our heads. So kind of an example of this is here. I have a bunch of pairs, a bunch of words, doesn't really matter too much what they are. But if I want to find the link between paradoxes and Zeno, I'd have to try and remember all these different links and try and find, in this case, paradoxes links to infinity and infinity links to Zeno. But if I show that as sort of this network diagram, I can find that much easier. And I'm also tempted to look for multiple paths. Whereas if I'm trying to just do that in memory with all those pairs, I probably find one and I probably say that's good enough. I've got one link. Whereas this encourages you to take that high level overview and really come up with the best solution to the problem. And lastly, when we're looking at numbers, we're actually decoding symbols. So if I try and compare these three numbers, it's back to stuff we learned in grade 1 and grade 2, but I have to think about the thousands, the hundreds, the tens, the decimal points, all those things. Whereas if I show those visually as, encoding them as bars, which is encoding into length here, I see really concrete representation where I don't have to do any encoding at all. And this allows us to get around problems like the 99-cent pricing problem, where I see something that's $19.99, and that seems like it's way less than something that's $20. So we kind of avoid that decoding. So by visualizing, we get to focus on the big picture, we get to compare patterns, we get to see those patterns among the values, and we really increase our depth of understanding. So just a little bit of terminology you might have seen out there. I'm talk about what a data graphic is versus an infographic versus a data visualization. So a data graphic is where we're using words and numbers together to show some data. We're probably adding icons to help ease understanding. We're doing some design to sort of represent this data. We're picking very carefully what we're showing, but we're not doing a lot of visualization. We're not taking those numbers and transforming them into geometry that we can visually see. We're just sort of presenting the numbers in a really well-designed way. An infographic is where we actually visually encode quantities or maybe qualitative data into marks, shapes, colors, lengths, all these different visual attributes. So that's the difference there. What's the difference between an infographic and a data visualization? Usually infographics are really geared towards telling these premeditated stories. They're often pretty subjective, and it's often used for guiding an audience to conclusions and pointing out relationships and things like that. Data visualization we tend to think of as being a bit more objective. Usually it's sort of as a chart type, a tool that's designed for maybe many different types of data. It's not just designed for one specific data set. And it's usually helping you understand data at a glance and sort of visually explore it. And so just to visually show what that looks like, on the left we have an infographic. It's really telling the story of Lumen technology. It's highlighting certain data values, showing you charts and things, and a bunch of different stuff. Whereas on the right, we have a more sort of data visualization where you can see a data set and sort of explore it yourself without being walked through a story. And so here's a couple of examples from libraries. Both are infographics where there's some amount of data graphics where they're just showing some numbers, but there's also bar charts and things like that. And last of all, going back to a dashboard from Mary Jo at the very beginning, where dashboards, we're taking a visual display of sort of what's the most important information, looking to achieve an objective, and trying to usually do that on a single screen so you can monitor it and watch for things changing. So that's the definition parts, and I'm going to bring in Justine here.
Hi, as mentioned, I'm Justine, and I'm just going to walk through some of the pages, things available in the toolkit. So to begin with, you don't have to remember every term that we use because there is a glossary in the toolkit that will explain some of the different concepts and things you should know for visualization, and it will even talk about different types of dashboards, whether they're operational, strategic, or analytical. There's also examples of dashboards that we've linked to, a few from Canada, quite a few from the US, got one in there, I think, from New Zealand. So after this presentation, if you want to see some examples of how libraries are using dashboards, you can certainly do that. And there are also, it's a focus on academic libraries. And the next one here is?
Yes, so this is an example of sort of visualization used by a researcher in the library. This is Stefania Forlini and Uta Hinrichs and Bridget Monahan working in Calgary with one of our special collections. We have this crazy collection of 800 anthologies of early science fiction, and they created this visualization to look at that special collection, the distribution over time, by subjects, by keywords, that let you sort of pick through those anthologies and pull out interesting things. And we have the link there if you want to go online and see this visualization and explore it yourself. Another visualization we use internally here is this one we created this fall to look at how reserved items were used. And so this was a visualization where we took data out of our library management system and looked at how often reserved items were checked out. And you can see in that bar there, 20% 0 times, and then 1, 2 to 5, and then getting up to the higher levels there. And so this sort of gave us a broad level overview of reserved items.
And so we put this one in because I've just talked about a few things on the toolkit that show you some dashboards, and this one happened to not be in here. And we like this one because it was done by the head of the teaching and learning here at the University of Calgary. And what you're seeing here is how you can use a dashboard not only to show value, but to do the analysis and decision making. So when she put this together with John, what you can see right away is that we're spending a great deal of time putting material on reserve, and yet most material is only being used about 1 time, and sometimes 2 times, and often 0, especially as we go up into higher course levels. So for us, a 200 is a first-year course, and a 600 would be a graduate course. So, of course, when she sees this data, when she saw this data, they want to take a better look at it and analyze it more. And that's one of the strengths of dashboards. They lead you to analysis and to different ways of thinking about a problem, dashboards and visualizations, I should say. So then, having seen the aggregate data, it was then broken down, and it becomes immediately apparent that some faculties are putting a great deal of material on reserve and it's not being used. You can see, for instance, Cumming, which is engineering, there's not a lot of use of some of that material, especially at the higher levels. So what this can be used for is both to look at your process and how much time and money you're putting into your operation. Are you getting value for it? Is this a marketing thing? Do librarians need to work more with professors and instructors on reserve material and what should go on reserve? So that's one of the values that you can use, one of the ways you can find value using a dashboard and visualization. So having shown you a few examples of dashboards, we're going to go back to the toolkit and give you a few more examples. And what we just saw was using your data to do a data visualization and analysis. And so one of the important things, of course, is what data are you going to use? And we do have a tab on the toolkit that lists some different ways of collecting data and some different sources that you can use. And what I like about this tab as well is that it gives you some key points about data collection, things that you should be doing, provides some links to benchmarking data. And then what they've done for this section of the guide is that there's always a basic example. In this case, when we're talking about benchmarking, the basic example is you can look at institutional expenditure, for instance, on library relative to peers. But they've also provided a more complex example. So if you're more familiar with data visualization or assessment, you can take a look at some different ways to do benchmarking. So the guide is quite accessible for different levels of understanding and different paths in assessment. Another one that they have is for collections. And so again, you see the basic example, and you see a more complex example. And what's also in this section is for each area of potential study, such as collections and resources, there's also a key report that's been linked to. So for this one, it's from ACRL, and it is a spec kit. Again, the creators of this guide have tried to provide examples for some of the core activities that libraries do, or some of the most common things that libraries do. So this one relates to discovery and delivery, and you're seeing that trend again of basic examples, and then a more complex example, and then a key report. And the same, of course, for instruction. We have that here. So for anybody just getting started in visualization or wondering how to link it to assessment or evidence-based decision-making or showing value, these are really good sections of the guide. And then finally, there's one, of course, for space, so that you can take a look at. Beyond that, a list has been provided of some of the best practices for visualization. So on the left, there's common questions that you should ask yourself or consider when you're doing visualizations. And then on the right, they provide links to further information on the topic. So you can see that there's quite a bit of advice being provided and a number of links. And some of those links will provide things such as, if you have this type of data, what type of visualization should you be using? What data fits with which visualization? Because sometimes that can be difficult to understand if you haven't done a visualization or a dashboard before, and you want to make this the best visualization possible. So in concluding that, we've just put, as Mary Jo said, data visualization can be used for exploration internally to help you make good decisions, but it can also be used to show value and communicate and get your message out to your audience. And depending on what you're doing, if you're doing something just for a quick analysis, good enough might be good enough. If you're communicating it out, you might need to put more time in. So there are links for all of that in the toolkit.
Okay, so with that, I will just tell you that Carl, as I mentioned, believes in continuous improvement. It will not only be updating this hopefully regularly, but also moving it to a WordPress document that's a little bit easier to look at and navigate. It is bilingual, and I could tell you lots about developing bilingual tools. We're bilingual in Canada, so it is. And finally, I guess I should have just said that my connection to this project was that I do chair the continuing education working group and a member of the assessment committee. So I've been involved with it for some period of time.
Okay, we do have a few minutes now where we can take questions about this part of the presentation before we move on. So I know I saw a couple in the chat box already. One person asking the presenters, can you speak to why you chose the donut chart? I read that to avoid this chart, so maybe you could speak to that particularly, the example you shared.
So with that one, there's visualization research going back and forth. Some people saying it's good, some people really avoided it. 10 years ago, it was pretty much unanimous to avoid it. And pie charts, but some of the more recent research shows that it can be more memorable. And even though people can't read values as accurately, if you don't have too many values, it does work well. In that case, we especially used it to compress space. So when we're showing, you know, the 6 different levels of courses, we want to be able to fit them in a small space. And it just seemed like the bars were kind of too cluttered looking. But that doesn't mean that, you know, bars might not be a better way of doing that. We felt that the donuts met our needs for that one.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple other questions coming in here. Just to answer one of them straight off the bat, yes, the slides will be sent out afterwards as well and made available in the project outcome resources. Looks like there was a question about the CARL toolkit. Where do I find the complex examples?
So I'll answer that. What that was under, I believe, was data sources and collections. And so if you go to that tab, that's where you will then be able to see at the top of each page, first a basic example and then a complex example, and then some links to key reports.
Okay, great. Another question about software. What software do you recommend for creating dashboards? How long did it take for you to develop your first library dashboard?
So there's a variety of things out there. Two really popular ones would be Power BI and Tableau. Tableau tends to be available in academic environments, and it's pretty simple to use. Power BI is kind of the main alternative by Microsoft, and those are two kind of good, easy ways. They're sort of big ecosystems that can take in lots of different data types, and sort of good ways to get started. But there are, of course, plenty of other tools out there.
We had another question about software from earlier. Why not add R/RStudio to the tools and text software options, especially since Tidyverse and ggplot2 are great for visualization along with Shiny for dashboards?
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Sounds like a good suggestion to incorporate going forward, maybe. There's a question about accessibility. How do you accommodate the visually impaired with visualizations?
Yeah, so there are certain things you can do. The most obvious one that you have to keep in mind is designing for those with color blindness. And so making sure you don't use red and greens together. And some basic things like that. There does come the point where for people who are, completely blind and visually impaired, there isn't much to be done there. And so that's where you're going back to making the data available so that whatever means they have to read that data through Braille or whatever that might be, they have that ability. So I guess just, making the data available.
And that, if I could add to it, would be something that you would really want to think about when you're using a visualization to communicate. But if you're using a visualization to do analysis or evidence-based, then normally it's going to just a few people. And so you may not have to worry about that as much depending on who's in your workforce.
It's a good point, though, that I think there were some infographics and others that institutions are using to convey their information. And there are ways of making some of those accessible and friendly to readers. It's not, you have to be conscious that there are issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like there are a couple of training related questions. Have you trained library folks in data visualization, or do you recommend any particular online training or learning tools?
So we do a series of workshops here on kind of the basics of how to encode data, as well as on we have an overview of tools, and we have some specific sessions on Tableau specifically. So that is one aspect that we do. And those are kind of geared both towards staff as well as graduate students and undergraduate students at the university.
And we have supported people attending ALA and other places where there have been pre-conferences and sessions on using these tools as well.
And we're also lucky to have quite an active research group on campus, and they've had some speaker series bringing in really dynamic, active people in the research community talking about designing visualizations and sort of the ongoing research challenges there.
And one last point, John is our full-time person for data, which includes visualizations. So he's been a great point person for all of us who've done any data visualizations.
It's such a great resource to have when you have an in-house person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one more question before we move on. There's a question, what challenges have you run into regarding data governance and or data privacy in collecting data and visualizing it?
We haven't. Well, I mean, we're very conscious of privacy here because we have stringent privacy requirements. So data that is protected and private data tends not to appear in our visualizations in any disaggregated format that could identify or be personally identifiable. So we are careful about that, but it's a very conscious decision because of our privacy laws.
Okay, thank you. We can continue to take questions at the end. So if anything else occurs to you while you're listening to the rest of the presentation, please do type in the chat box and we'll make sure to catch those before the end of today's session. At this point, we are going to change over to the next section. Okay, so we're going to switch gears now and talk a little bit about project outcome for academic libraries. And Gina is going to start us off.
Yes, so if you're not familiar with Project Outcome for Academic Libraries, it's a free toolkit for academic and research librarians and LIS students, and it's designed to help academic libraries understand and share the impact of essential library services and programs by providing simple surveys with an easy-to-use process for measuring and analyzing outcomes. Project Outcome also provides libraries with the resources and training support needed to apply their results and confidently advocate for their library's future. And I just want to emphasize that this toolkit is for everybody, not just for people with assessment in their job titles or descriptions. It was explicitly designed to relate to the widest possible range of library services and roles. The ACRL Project Outcome for Academic Libraries is based on a model developed and tested by the Public Library Association, which has been in the field since 2015. So if you haven't signed up yet, now is your chance. It's free and the registration process is quick and easy. If you experience any problems, don't hesitate to get in contact with us at acrl@projectoutcome.org. If you are based outside the United States, you may need to get in touch with us to have your institution added to the system when you register. So if you could just let us know by raising your hands if you are already participating in the Project Outcome Toolkit. Oh, so it looks like a fair number of you are. That's excellent. So the Project Outcome Toolkit offers these advantages. Quick and simple surveys. You can use them straight out of the box or choose to add custom questions. There's also an easy-to-use survey management portal to collect and enter your survey data, as well as ready-made reports that the system generates for you, as well as customizable data reports that you can create yourself. The interactive data dashboards have aggregate benchmarks that tell you how you're doing compared to your peers. We also have resources and training materials to help libraries engage in the outcome measurement process. The peer discussion board is another big feature. You can ask questions and share examples of what works or doesn't work for you with everyone else who is using the toolkit. This combination of ready-to-go surveys and easy-to-use tools really helped library staff save time and energy in planning their data collection, leaving more time for decision-making and advocacy once the results are in. And just to reiterate, all the surveys, tools, and resources available on Project Outcome for Academic Libraries are free for all academic and research librarians as well as LIS students. So we know that there are many types of assessment and ways that you can measure your library's impact. Project Outcome is intended to help you measure learning outcomes, which doesn't mean you have to stop doing other kinds of assessment. They're complementary. Outcomes are one important piece of the assessment puzzle. Different types of impact measurement can help you understand different questions that you may be seeking to answer. So the needs assessment helps answer the question, what does your community need? Patron satisfaction can help you learn what you should do better. Outputs will help you figure out how much you did do. And outcomes can help you answer the question, what good did we do? Adding outcome data to your impact story will help drive decision-making and strategic planning. This is where Project Outcome comes in. This means not just how many students participated in the library instruction sessions, for example, but how much they report learning from those sessions. We have 7 Survey topics, which are based on sets of surveys by and for other academic librarians. These survey topics cut across user types within academic and research libraries, from undergraduates to faculty to the public. So there's a wide range of options. The project outcome surveys are designed to capture 4 key outcomes: knowledge, confidence, application or behavior change, and awareness. The outcome statements ask patrons to identify whether they gained knowledge, gained confidence, used what they learned, changed their behavior, or gained awareness of the library's resources. There are also 2 open-ended questions that help you get the most out of your patrons' feedback. What did they like most about the program, and what can the library do to improve? These open-ended questions we found are especially valuable to libraries. This is where you gain the specific insights into how to help your patrons and gather qualitative evidence to demonstrate their impact. These outcomes can be measured using 3 different tools in Project Outcome. We first have the immediate surveys, which capture patron-reported learning. They're designed for use upon completion of a program or service. The follow-up surveys capture patron-reported adoption or application. These are designed for use after some time has elapsed since the program service. And the outcome measurement guidelines and other resources in the toolkit can help you design your own surveys and data gathering methods to capture long-term impact. You can use all 3 tools or any combination or just one. It's a flexible toolkit.
Okay, thank you, Gina. With that, I think it's back over to me. So I find it helpful to often conceptualize data visualizations as falling into 2 overlapping categories. One is exploration, which is thinking about how you can use visualization to help explore your results, to apply different filters, to look for outliers, to consider change over time. These are often very complex sort of data visualizations because the goal is to see as much information as possible to be able to identify important patterns and connections. The other purpose that we often see is communication. So once you've had a chance to analyze and explore those results, what are the key findings? What do you want to be able to share with your stakeholders and communicate? And in those cases, the visualizations might be more static rather than interactive, or they can use visual cues such as color or emphasis to highlight that important information and to try and make a point, to make an argument. And Project Outcome allows you to do both of these things, but it's worth considering as you get started what your primary purpose is, or what order you might be doing them in. And the CARL resources as well in the toolkit that our co-presenters talked about, those can be really helpful to help you think through the process too. So within Project Outcome, there are a number of dashboards that can help you explore the data that you collect. As we learned from John earlier in the presentation, the first of these dashboards, the overview dashboard, is what might be called a data graphic. This is just giving you an overview of all the data that your library collects and enters into the toolkit. It shows it by survey topic and also by outcome, as Gina talked about. And these are aggregate scores across all the different outcomes-based questions. You also get some peer comparisons, and benchmarking is a really important feature here. So for US libraries, you'll be benchmarking against others in the same Carnegie class and against other users nationwide. For international libraries, those of you in Canada, your benchmarks are nationwide and international. The detailed dashboard is going to show you more specific results by the specific questions for each survey. So those questions, the outcomes questions that Gina talked about, are standardized for each of the surveys. And they align with those 4 key learning outcomes. You can also add your own questions to the surveys as well. You can add up to 3 custom questions, but the dashboards focus on visualizing those standardized questions, which are benchmarked. So the detailed dashboard gives you a chance to look in more detail at those results for each of those questions and to apply different filters to explore your data. And all of these are interactive, and they're also color-coded. They are colorblind friendly. That's why the colors are purple and green. So those are the filters there at the top. The matrix dashboard gives you yet another way of exploring the relationships in your data. I know it's a little bit scary to some people, it looks a little bit confusing, but it's just visualizing the relationship between those survey topics and those key learning outcomes. You can see based on the intensity and the color where there are stronger positive or negative relationships. And again, this is all interactive, so if you mouse over, it'll give you a little bit more detail as to what you're looking at. There's also a map functionality. So on the map, if you have entered a physical address for your library, if there's one in the system, your library will show up, it'll be mapped, and you'll see other participating libraries just as black dots. So even though the benchmarks are there, you're only benchmarking in aggregate, it's not a competition, you're not seeing anyone else's specific data, but you can get a sense of who is participating and what other users you might be benchmarking against. For Canadian users, your map will just show you users in Canada. And again, for your library to show up in the right place here, you do need to make sure there is a physical address entered. You can fix that or enter it yourself from your account management page in the toolkit. For our users in the US, we also do have this extra functionality, which is the ability to explore library outcomes data alongside census data. So particularly for institutions that tend to draw from a particular catchment area, community colleges, and others, this can be an interesting feature to look at how well you might be serving your community and what that community looks like. So again, the dashboards here are all interactive and they're all intended to help you explore the various facets of your data. There are also ways that once you're ready to communicate those findings, that you can do that from the project outcome system. So one key way is through the reports. So there are two types of reports: a summary report, which just gives you an overview of one particular survey that can be good to share like with your supervisor if you're talking about how a program went. You can also build custom reports that help you look at, overall, how is your library doing, like for a particular program, or, for all instruction over one semester, things like that. So there's a custom report builder where you can apply filters and create those sorts of reports that can then be shared with staff or management or other stakeholders in the library. Any of the dashboards as well can be shared by either printing the dashboard, printing the screen to a PDF, or capturing a screenshot, but you won't be able to capture that interactive functionality. And of course, since I know we probably have many people on the call today who are more interested in engaging with the data more deeply, you can access your raw data. So you can download data from one particular survey. You can also download data from as many surveys as you would like using the survey responses viewer from the survey management toolkit. You will need to do that to get access to those open-ended responses or to responses to any additional custom questions that you are adding yourself. So the open-ended responses, you'll have to download the raw data or add them to a report in order to be able to see those. So this can be really useful to do more with your project outcome data, to share data with stakeholders outside the library, to combine it with other types of data to tell a story about your library's value, its impact, or to create other types of visualizations or reports. So the example on the screen there is just what we did with the field testing data from project outcome as we were creating the toolkit and testing out the surveys. One easy place to start as you're looking at exploring data more deeply is by creating pivot tables. So when you download raw data from Project Outcome, you'll get a spreadsheet that's going to look something like this. You can see it's got the different program names, program dates, survey topics, survey types, as well as all those responses. And so it's really easy then to select the field you're interested in looking at in more detail, and then create a pivot table based on that. So in this case, I've selected the column for the survey topic, and that would allow me then to look at, for example, the activity across the library, like how much activity has there been for these different survey topics. That is something that you can see in the data dashboards just by numbers. It'll tell you how many responses you have for each of those surveys, but it doesn't really show it in a comparative way like you might be able to do with Excel in this instance. You could try out different visualizations that way. This is also what you want to do to start looking at qualitative data analysis. So we do have resources in the toolkit that can help you with both quantitative analysis as well as qualitative data analysis. For the qualitative analysis, we are looking at building a qualitative data dashboard, but for now, you will have to download that raw data out of the system to explore it further. A good place to start, just to get a really broad overview, a sense of what those responses to the open-ended question look like, is to look at word frequency. And so the most common visualization for this is word clouds. I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and that can just show you, overall what words are coming up most commonly. You can also then start to look at relationships between different words. So, the word quiet appears and it's connected to other terms that frequently show up in the comments with the word quiet. This is an analysis of the space survey, the study room data. So both of those can just help give you an entry point, particularly if you have a whole lot of survey responses, hundreds of survey responses, that can give you an idea of what to look for as you start digging a little bit more deeply. Also, many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with coding. So we do provide a worksheet, a sample worksheet that can help you learn how to code survey responses. This you just go through and for each of the responses, decide what sort of category it falls into, and that gives you data then to quantify what sort of responses you're getting. So you could end up with a chart like this that a lot of people are saying what they liked the most about a particular program was the topic, or they liked the fact that it was social, they got to interact with their friends. And so you get a quantitative visualization of that qualitative data. And again, there are resources here in the toolkit once you're logged in that can help you dig into aspects of this a little bit more deeply. So I saw a couple questions come up in the chat already, so I will take a look at those. And if you have other questions, please also take this opportunity to type those in the chat as well. We have another few minutes where we can answer additional questions.
So Sarah, this is one from earlier in the project outcome presentation. For open-ended questions, do you have a recommended coding?
Okay, so I think we kind of touched on that a little bit. There is that sample worksheet in the toolkit already that might be useful, but you might also want to adjust those categories, depending on the type of program, the type of data that you're looking at.
And then how often are the Carnegie class designations updated?
Yes, so all the Carnegie class designations are based on the Carnegie class data set. The last iteration just came out, I think, the beginning of last year, and I believe they do a new iteration every 3 years. So we would update it as soon as they release the new data set.
And then somebody has a question about the matrix dashboard, wondering what tool did you use to make the Circos plot?
So we have web developers that did all the back-end work on creating those dashboards. I believe it is all done in R. But if you would like further information, please send us an email and I could get more details for you.
And then we have a few questions about integration. How do these tools integrate with analytics tools from an ILS system? For instance, we have Alma from Ex Libris. And then another person wonders if they're using surveys in LibWizard, is there any compatibility to upload?
Okay, so the easiest of those questions is uploading data. As long as you are using either the project outcome system, if you're using the project outcome system to administer your surveys and someone is filling out the survey online, all of the data will automatically go into the system. You can also use our paper surveys or use another survey management tool if you would prefer, in which case then you would need to enter that data. You can enter it directly into the system. There are a couple of different options for doing that. We also provide templates that you can use in Excel to enter the data and then upload it in bulk. In terms of integrating with other systems, I think it's best to view project outcome as complementary. So we do not collect any personally identifiable information. So if you have more specific patron data in another type of system, you're not going to be able to integrate it one-to-one with project outcome because we don't use any we ask that you not ask questions like what's your student ID number or what's your email address, because we take privacy very seriously. So I think it's best to see them as two data sets that can be used in a complementary way to tell the library's story, rather than as something that you can match up necessarily.
Great. And one more question, is there a minimum number of peer institutions required before peer comparisons are shown?
No, so you will see comparisons. It's just if no one else in Canada, for example, had entered any data, you'd be comparing against yourself. However, I do know that there are other Canadian libraries participating, but it'll be more useful as more people start to participate and that we have more data for those folks to compare to. Again, we just launched in April, so we've seen a great take up so far, but we're still building the bigger data set.
And then we have a question about a new survey. Are there future plans to include collection development and collection analysis aside from the digital and special collections survey? For example, peer comparison with other libraries.
Okay, so Project Outcome is based on learning outcomes data. So when the task force that developed these surveys was coming up with the topics, one of the things we talked about was the difficulty of just assessing collections based on outcomes, that it's those tend to be much more transactional statistics as opposed to outcomes based. So even the digital and special collection survey is based on like assuming there is like a reference consultation or instruction that is happening in a special collections or archive space, rather than assessing the collection itself. It's based on some interaction between the user and the library. All of the surveys are that way. So there's a difference, like with the space survey, that's the example that's maybe easiest to understand. It's a satisfaction survey would be, do you like the chairs in the library? Whereas an outcomes-based survey is like, how does using this group study room help you learn? How does it facilitate your learning? So there are different types of questions, and that's again where it's useful to think about outcomes data being just one piece of that assessment puzzle, and not, this is not unfortunately a magic solution to all your assessment problems.
And then we've got a few sort of practical questions about the toolkit that I'll go ahead and answer, and feel free to jump in, Sarah, if I've missed anything.
Sure.
Can this be used by international academic libraries? Yes, it can. The system has only populated the United States libraries, but we are happy to add your international institution. You can just email us to get that set up. Can we add multiple libraries that are on different campuses but are all part of one college? It depends on how you're classified in the Carnegie. Sometimes, oh, sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yes, you can add locations to your surveys. You can set that up in your account. So for example, if you have 2 libraries, you can set the location for each individual library, and then you'll be able to assess data based on the location. Then we have a question, should we only have one account for the library, or does it work if we have multiple accounts? Each individual can set up their own account. During the registration process, you'll be prompted to select your institution, and then you will be able to see all of the surveys from your institution when you log in, created by everybody who is connected there.
Yeah, I would just add to that, we really want to empower everyone within the library to get engaged in this process. So that's part of the reason it is set up that way. We want you to, work together and to everyone to feel like they can make changes, to make improvements based on the data that your library is collecting. So you might want to coordinate that a little bit on your end, have a meeting and figure out, what you're going to use the toolkit for, where it will be most useful, but definitely everyone can set up an account.
And then it is noon. We have one quick final question. Is there any connection with the annual ACRL metrics data?
Unfortunately, at this time, no, but that is something that we are looking at doing more of in the future. So stay tuned. And with that, I'll just wrap up quickly. So if you are a project outcome user, we will have more webinars like this, other in-person events as well. You'll get email updates. Definitely follow us to find out what else is going on. If you have more questions after today, please feel free to send us an email, acrl@projectoutcome.org. We are also happy to pass along any additional questions you may have for the presenters from CARL, from their part of the presentation. And please take 2 minutes to fill out a survey that can help us improve future programs. Gina has popped the link into the chat box there. So I just want to extend a final thank you to Mary Jo and Justine and John for their part of this presentation, for agreeing to participate today. And thank you all for coming and for your questions.